On the bedrock Candyscape Hill, growth won't be a blight. Exhaust from 10,000 cars won't turn our day to night. Our airport won't be hard to find, we'll just get a great big light. We ain't blowing smoke, though it makes you choke, in the name of growth by a pig and a poke, by the big rock Candyscape Hill.
Hello, I am your host, Lolo Peak, and I'm going to be presenting an issue that looms on the horizon of the Missoula and Bitterroot valleys, both literally and figuratively. It is an issue that everyone should be concerned with because it may have some effect on us all. That issue is the possible development of Lolo Peak and the surrounding lands into a destination ski resort. I am very concerned with how this resort can affect the quality of life for residents of both the Missoula and Bitterroot valleys. The citizens of those valleys can still influence the outcome. So I'm going to present the issue with the help of some experts. I want you to know what's at stake and what you can do about it. The Bitterroot Resort is the dream child of a local resident, Tom McClay. He owns some land in the Bitterroot Valley that is adjacent to the Lolo National Forest. He is already trying to develop ski runs and property on his land. But the real issue is that he wants to use the national forest lands of Lolo Peak for his ski resort and thus make money off of public lands. Here is Bob Clark of the Montana Sierra Club to describe the lay of the land.
This here is Highway 93 running south and north. Up is north, and along the top, near the top, there's the red line, that's Highway 12, running over that way to Lolo Pass. And the town of Lolo is up in that intersection up there. This here in the blue is the private land that's owned by Mr. McClay, the developer, and that's all of this blue area, including the yellow runs that you see here up to about this point. And so these yellow runs are the ones that folks see that are cut into the hillside. These can be seen from Missoula, driving down through Lolo and Florence. So visually, what you're looking at when you're out there is basically this. And this is sort of the cutoff point. Everything from here on is national forest land. So this portion here is the private land portion, and everything else over there would be on public land. There's about a little under 3,000 acres involved on the private land section of this proposal, and about 11,800 acres of national forest land that's being asked of the public. That includes the area in here. These purple lines are the ski runs. The red lines are the ski lifts. This is a restaurant that's proposed on Carlton Ridge, on the border of the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness and on the Research Natural Area. Future expansion is noted here in this blue that runs all the way up and over. Future expansion's already being looked at as part of this proposal, but the main proposal will be this stuff in here. Now, all of this here is public land. Now, the stuff that's this yellowish color is inventoried roadless land, and that's identified by the Forest Service as the Lolo Creek inventoried roadless area. It's about 16,000 acres, and the proposal would cover about 7,000 or so acres of that roadless area, basically eliminating it from future consideration for wilderness designation. And it would no longer be roadless because of the types of development and the road system that would be needed to maintain the structures and the development. And this is some of the stuff that we're looking at as far as development of that area: full-service village, restaurants and boutiques. I used to say shops, but I changed it to boutiques because the PR team is now using the word boutique to describe the shops up there. Housing units would be 2,200 or more. Underground parking, ice skating rink, golf course. Anyone who's been to Aspen or any of those places knows the deal here. Restaurant on top of Carlton Ridge. Ski runs, lifts, supporting road system. Comparable resorts. Tamarack Resort is one of those resorts. This place is in Donnelly, Idaho. It's a fairly new development. And the folks that are proposing the development on the Bitterroot Resort are using Tamarack as an example. In fact, they use the same PR team as the Tamarack Resort. I think one of the key things when we talk about comparable resorts, in an article that was out a few weeks ago in the business section of the Missoulian, talks about the Tamarack Resort and Village, which is under construction. Places like that, the Tamarack specifically has a club that people can join for $45,000. That membership in that club gives people exclusive access, early access to the ski mountain and other perks. Same thing that we're talking about with Big Sky. You know, we've got the Yellowstone Club down there. These are exclusive type areas for certainly not a ski bum area, that's for sure.
Now you know what the Bitterroot planners want: pristine public land. In return, they are making a number of promises and justifications for why they should be allowed to have this land. Let's look at these justifications one by one, comparing justification with countering information in an effort to modify the spin on reality that they put. First, let's look at a common justification for any business, and that is jobs. So let's hear from Mr. McClay.
Bitterroot will also be a catalyst for economic growth by creating good-paying jobs, encouraging year-round tourism, increasing the dollars flowing into our communities, and attracting clean, desirable businesses to Western Montana. We are eager to work with Montana businesses to help them grow. That is a big part of the Bitterroot Resort promise.
Now let's hear what an economist has to say about all this.
It will contribute jobs in the local economy. And about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, when the resort was first being marketed in the media, that was a sales pitch. It's going to present or contribute so many jobs to the Missoula Valley economies. That number was put out initially, and it hasn't really been visited very often since by the Tom McClay and his resort team. But regardless of the number of jobs, I think the more critical question is, what kinds of jobs are we talking about? What's the nature of these jobs? Are they good jobs? What the pay is? What are the benefits? And equally important, when we look at a project of this magnitude, an important question is who would get the jobs? The data show that many of the jobs associated with ski resort real estate projects are basically low-wage jobs in low-skilled occupations. They're not year-round jobs, and many of them do not offer health insurance. Many of the jobs, indeed, when you look at them again at the resorts that are out there already in the Rocky Mountains, from Jackson Hole to Vail to Aspen, are jobs that are taken up by workers from outside the area. And basically, I've looked at this data for every year now for the past 4 years, and essentially what it shows is that about 55 to 60% of the jobs in these resorts are basically $8 and $9 an hour jobs. They are tourism jobs. More recent times, this is euphemistically sometimes called leisure hospitality jobs, but they're basically tourism jobs. They are seasonal. And when you look at the data that, when you break it into occupations, just to get a sense of what kinds of jobs, a lot of them are in food prep, driving, loading, office clerking, cleaning, maintenance. In fact, about 60% of them roughly add up to those lower skilled, low wage job categories. And what I do is to say, okay, given that those are the kinds of jobs that they find in those resorts that are already in operation, what would these jobs look like in Montana using Montana data? So if we use Montana Department of Labor and Industry data, we find that many of these jobs are basically below $10 an hour, with the exception of driving and loading. So it's a matter of taking data that's out there to get some sense of what kind of jobs are we talking about. And essentially, many of these are lower wage jobs without benefits. that Colorado data shows every year that, in fact, tourism jobs basically are the leading employment sector that does not offer health benefits. So it's
77% of chamber members polled support the concept of a destination ski resort as envisioned by Bitterroot Resort.
So do we Western Montanans really need these jobs promised by the Bitterroot Resort? It's not surprising to find that the Missoula Chamber of Commerce thinks that we do, but that's their job. So economically, what do we find? Do we really need them?
Now, when we look at the contribution to economic development, that sort of makes you back up and ask, well, what has been going on in our area in terms of recent economic development? What's the performance been? And by and large, when you look at Western Montana, and specifically both Missoula and Ravalli County, we've had strong job and income growth over the past years. We've had jobs of 22,000 growing jobs in Missoula County, 5,000 jobs in Ravalli County over the past 7 years. Many of these jobs that we have seen coming in and being added to our employment base have been pretty good jobs. A lot of them have been in health services, business services, and construction. These are jobs frequently that pay higher wages, clearly above $10 an hour, sometimes $15, $16 an hour, and many of them offer benefits. And when you look at the overall order of magnitude of this kind of growth that we've had going on, when we look at it in terms of income, more than $100 million in income from the health sector, $98 million from business services, and clearly probably another $100 million from construction. Economic growth occurred in our area even during the 2001 recession. So we're not exactly an economically depressed, stagnant economy, which is sometimes used as a justification for bringing in a resort. And in the near term, we can take a look at projections from the Montana Department of Labor and Industry, who's suggesting we're going to have 17,000 new jobs over the next 7 years. Many of those will be in those same sectors that we've been adding to in our recent economic growth: health, business services, construction. Most economic forecasters over the whole spectrum, from different flavored economists, including myself, predict that basically growth has been strong and will continue to be so. Part of that growth is being motivated, in fact, by a lot of different factors. We have entrepreneurs, firms, we have business people, we have health providers that move into the area, setting up businesses, and a critical factor in all of that is, in fact, our public lands. When you ask people why they move here, when you ask individual proprietors and entrepreneurs why they move here, it's frequently because there's a lot of open land, there's great public land for hunting, fishing, hiking, for taking your kids out to, and that basically makes that land a high-value economic asset. So it doesn't have to be developed to be an asset. It attracts more health and professional business service jobs, and basically this is the idea of amenity-based development, which is not the same as tourism development.
So apparently, yes, the Bitterroot Resort will bring in jobs, but the jobs are no better than the jobs that are currently coming in without the resort. Our current rate of growth is obviously bringing in jobs that are actually better. Indeed, most of the jobs brought in by the resort are worse with respect to wages and benefits. Plus, many of the businesses with good jobs come because of our open lands, and Bitterroot Resort would kind of diminish that. There is one other economic thing that we need to consider. This is one that the Bitterroot Resort folks tend not to mention, and that is that having a large ski area will help them sell the high-priced property that will surround it. But what do those high prices do to our property and our property values?
Again, we're asking the question, what kinds of costs and benefits are we going to get from this project for giving up these public lands that they wish to use for the skiing operation? Our potential impacts on affordable housing. Resort housing is a second home market. Indeed, this is where the money is, and the numbers become staggering. Bob had mentioned Tamarack earlier, and this past 4 or 5 months ago, Tamarack Resort took another round of lots. These are smaller parcels of land without a house on them, and they sold for $700,000 a piece. Look, in our own state of Whitefish, the last time somebody had some data up there about 3 or 4 years ago, lots, again, that's without the house, were in the neighborhood of $350,000 and up in and around the resort area. When we look at another major community impact, given those 700,000s or 650,000s, these enormously large numbers, which is the real estate part of the operation that essentially is the financial support for the resort or the skiing itself, what that does is it impacts the cost of housing in these communities. This is basically a diagram that shows, for example, that for Steamboat, housing prices are 60% higher than Hamilton, 65% higher than housing prices in Missoula. It gets down to lower percentages when we talk about Whitefish. Another ski resort you can bring in here, I don't have it on the chart, is Park City, Utah. When you look at housing prices in Park City, Utah, compared to Hamilton or Missoula, they are 125% higher on the average, and that's all kinds of housing. Tamarack was proposed as economic development and economic salvation for the Donnelly, McCall, Idaho area, an economically depressed area. And it has been economic salvation for someone, but basically many of the people that lived there before the resort got going can no longer afford to live there. When you have higher housing prices and rising land prices with no change in the property tax rate, simple arithmetic tells you your property tax bills go up. So that again is an impact that's being reported from all the resort real estate developments throughout the Northern Rockies as an effect on people who are already living there.
So, the resort will bring in low-paying jobs that we don't really need, and it will raise property prices and thus property taxes. So economically, this doesn't sound like a good deal for the Missoula and the Bitterroot valleys to me. But this isn't just about money. Money's always the bottom line, but money's not always the most important thing. These are about quality of life issues for Missoula residents and Valley residents. The things many people say that they come to this area for, the fact that it's less crowded, that it has less traffic, there's more open space and wild things. What's going to happen to these?
As far as what a community would look like, Salt Lake City has 10 very large ski resorts. You've got, I haven't heard of anybody talking about that degrading the quality of life of Salt Lake City.
So again, few quality of life issues will be augmented by the resort. Most will be diminished as the area becomes more crowded. Mr. McClay's comparison with Salt Lake City is a poor one. Salt Lake City already has a population of 1.2 million. It's already big and crowded. So Montana type quality of life issues aren't really a player there. What is there to diminish? Besides jobs and economic growth, the Bitterroot Resort tries to justify their public land grab with the promise of additional skiing opportunities.
It's only prudent planning, underscored by research that shows that western Montana is underserved today given consumer demand for winter recreation. Research also shows that by 2015, skier demand for a fully developed Bitterroot Resort will be nearly 40% higher than demand was during this last winter season.
If western Montana is truly underserved with respect to skiing, that's about to change. First of all, Missoula is surrounded by ski areas, most within an hour-and-a-half drive. You have Lost Trail, Snow Bowl, and Discovery. So I want to know what the criteria of underserved is. But then in addition to that, and the thing that the Bitterroot Resort folks are also not mentioning, is the fact that right now Snow Bowl is in the process of getting a permit to double the size of their area. The area would jump from 1,100 acres to just under 2,200 acres of skiable terrain. So here we have a ski hill that's already existing, run locally, and that's expanding into areas that are already roaded and have already had activities such as logging in them so we're not destroying natural, pristine areas. Why would we need another just down the road that is mainly built for millionaires? In addition, due to the location, the skiing at the Bitterroot Resort might not be ideal, as we hear.
I've had conversations with Clint Carlson. I mentioned him earlier. He's a retired Forest Service researcher, but he's also a ski industry veteran who's designed ski areas. He's taken a look at this resort. And what he's saying is that it's not feasible for skiing. There's some good skiing, but overall it's not what you'd be looking for in a world-class ski area. In fact, from the outlet of Carlton Lake, 2.5 miles east along Carlton Ridge, from the outlet of Carlton Lake, you have to take a lift up 400 feet to get to the next lift, which then takes you up again 300 feet. Now, I don't know how many skiers want to spend all day going uphill on lifts. Then you finally get some gradual skiing. For 2.5 miles, the grand total elevation loss is 80 feet.
So again, here's how it is. The Bitterroot Resort promises mediocre skiing that we don't really need. In exchange for this, what aspects of the public land are we sacrificing? Mr. McClay continues to make it sound so beneficial that we're getting this ski area, but is it?
We are refining a proposal that would employ less than 0.4% of public land on the Bitterroot and Lolo National Forests to create a diverse, year-round recreational experience that would meet growing demand for public land recreation and help help provide the economically sustainable use of national forest lands. Allocations that allow for a future ski destination can actually serve to introduce more people to the beauty of the Bitterroot-Selway Wilderness Backcountry. That's because Nordic skiers, young and old, alpine skiers and boarders, mountain bikers, hikers, and even persons in wheelchairs could be carried by ski lifts to relatively high elevations and miles, over 150 miles of backcountry views and adventures located south and west of Lolo Peak.
Some of the public land attributes, we've got a 16,000 acre Lolo Creek inventory roadless area, which I mentioned. Within that roadless area is a 920 acre Carlton Ridge Research Natural Area. Now, this is a designation by the Forest Service for an area that has unique plant or animal communities that the Forest Service has been actively researching. And this particular area has rare larch trees that have been researched since the 60s. There's hybrid larch that occur on Carlton Ridge. It's an alpine larch grow at a high elevation along the ridge tops, and western larch grow at lower elevations. And typically they don't meet in any elevation zone. Here on Carlton Ridge, a unique thing has happened where the alpine larch and the western larch have grown together, and they're actually hybridizing into a new species that has characteristics of each of those species of larch. And there's a grove of those on Carlton Ridge that scientists have been studying. The alpine larch that grow on the top of Carlton Ridge are rare. And the reason why is that this is the only place that alpine larch are growing on a established soil mantle. Alpine larch usually grow on rock and chipped rock and bedrock and wherever they can take a hold. What I've seen is it's a very unique area, and in fact, it's the only place in the United States that this occurs. And so it is something that is extremely rare, and it's something that's extremely valuable to the public and to research. And so I think that we need to think about that. The Research Natural Area has a certain protection under the forest plan. The Forest Service has not allowed development into the area and doesn't allow it. It's in the forest plan, and there is no precedent for development or having the RNA designation yanked from this. So this is an established use area, and it has very strict parameters on how it can be used and what can happen in it. And remember, that is within the 16,000 acre roadless area.
All of us support the goals and certainly the aesthetics of the research zone on Carlton Ridge. In fact, Bitterroot's recommended designation does not modify the Carlton Ridge Research Management Area. Moreover, Bitterroot Resort's recommendation is consistent with the expressed understanding of the Forest Service at the formation of the research area that science and skiing are compatible uses.
Mr. McClay is not a scientist. So he doesn't understand that science, particularly the kind of science that's being carried out on Carlton Ridge, is not compatible with skiing. It would not be applicable to an area covered with ski lifts, ski runs, and cat tracks. Right now, an ecosystem exists on Carlton Ridge that would be damaged by all of the requirements of a ski resort. Mr. McClay keeps talking about the Bitterroot proposal that says this, that, or the other thing, but the truth is, right now there is no active proposal submitted by the Bitterroot Resort. They submitted one proposal that has been rejected by the Forest Service, and nothing else has been submitted. They are making statements that they have yet to back up on paper.
Thank you. I'm Maggie Pittman with the Forest Service. I have the pleasure of working as the ranger at the Missoula district of the Lolo National Forest. Bitterroot Resort reps presented an initial conceptual plan for a ski area near Lolo Peak in February 2005, just about a year ago. Resource staff folks from the Lolo and the Bitterroot forests reviewed that plan for its compliance with current forest plan standards. In March, just a month after we got the initial plan, the forest responded to the proponents with a denial of their plan because it was inconsistent with our current forest plans. Essentially, it wasn't in compliance with the management standards that we've set up and the allocations for what we felt was suitable for the public lands in the area. We suggested to the Bitterroot Resort folks that they either rework their plan to be in compliance with the current forest plans, or they rework it as we go through and revise our forest plans, which is the process that we're in right now. To date, we have not received a new conceptual plan or a proposal for a new special use permit application for an alpine ski area near Lolo Peak.
It seems from the Forest Service process up to now, and particularly some of the meeting, the big meeting at the Doubletree, I guess last summer, that the overwhelming sense in those meetings was of opposition to this. I mean, it seemed that just from a numbers standpoint, that most of the people involved in that process were opposed. So I'm interested to know from the Forest Service planning standpoint, what would be the criteria for approving this kind of change in the plan? In other words, what might be the reasoning in light of the fact that most of the public comment you're getting is opposed to the change that would allow this? What might be the reasoning to allow it anyway?
In order for those allocations to change, we would need to determine that there was a higher need or a higher use than what we currently have the area allocated for. So right now in the current forest plan, our what we offered up was what we essentially have as status quo, which is the inventoried roadless area, the research natural area, and kind of a backcountry emphasis up there. So under Mr. McClay's option that he offered up, those allocations as they are now would remain unless he could make his proposal work within those allocations. So he would significantly have to alter his proposal in order to be within compliance for those standards that we've set.
The forest plan protects what is already existing on Lolo Peak, and many people like it the way that it is.
The entire area is extremely popular for hiking, camping, all of the things that I've listed up here. Any of you folks that have lived in this area for any length of time have either been up there, you brought your kids up there, you've been up there as kids. Everyone who's been here for any length of time has spent some time up and around Lolo Peak. These are some of the values and some of the things that the public is getting out of this area right now.
And, Friends of Lolo Peak did collect over 200 signatures at the trailhead on 2 weekends in the summer up there off of Mormon Creek Road. And then secondly, when Mormon Creek Road is open in the spring, you go up there and take a look at the number of people who are snowboarding, snowshoeing, and skiing up onto the ridge and the peak. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's just a lot of folks up there at that time with road access that way.
Mr. McClay doesn't appear to be willing to abide by the forest plan and has often taken matters into his own hands. He has cut down trees.
There's an investigation right now going on into alleged illegal road widening and tree cutting on public land along Carlton Ridge. This allegedly occurred in February. Sierra Club volunteer took some of the first pictures of this incident. And the Forest Service, the Bitterroot National Forest, has been investigating this all year, determining what had happened up there, why it happened, if there was any legal matters to be dealt with, and the value of the trees. We've heard reports of up to 300 trees cut on Carlton Ridge, and these would be alpine larch and whitebark pine. And when I was up there, we saw just at least 100 trees cut up along that ridge. There's an old Jeep road that runs from the lower end, from the property on the McClay Ranch, up on the ridge and then down into the Carlton Lake. And that's the area that had been widened and the trees cut at sometimes 20, 25 feet off the side of that route. So this was a headline out of the Missoulian that came out last spring. Again, these are your public lands, national forest lands. People can't just go up there and take bulldozers and chainsaws and start cutting things up without proper permission.
The federal government has filed suit against would-be ski resort developer Tom McClay, alleging he illegally cut about 400 trees and opened up roads on national forest property near his Lolo area ranch. The civil lawsuit asks U.S. District Judge Don Malloy to make McClay repay the government for damage done to public property and for the cost of rehabilitating the land. In addition to this, Mr. McClay has bulldozed into the riparian area surrounding McLean Creek that flows through his property, and the riparian area is all that wooded area that provides buffers for a river or stream that has trees and grasses, things that are necessary for a functioning, clear, clean stream. This creek has been listed as impaired by the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. This footage was shot in April 2004 on Tom McClay's property. This shows the destructive bulldozing of trees and vegetation adjacent to McLean Creek. The trees that were here served as an ecologically important riparian buffer. This is the kind of brute force clearing required by a ski area, since this area that is photographed was to be the bottom of a run. I want somebody to tell me how anything like this can be considered compatible with a natural resource area. This is the kind of decimation that occurs in the production or the construction of a ski hill. These are not the actions of a man or a group who would be willing to support a national research area. What he has done to his land is not good stewardship, but it's his land. He's going to build the development on his own land with or without the public land. Understand that. Although he has trouble actually admitting it.
So he wanted to know if the development would go forward without the federal forest land, just on the McClay land.
So what happens if the Forest Service says no?
What you've got, given the demand in this area, if you don't have public lands for skiing, is for alpine skiing. You don't have enough capacity for the demand that we confidently see out there. And realizing, of course, that passing a marshal, there simply is not enough area to accommodate the need.
Well, I noticed, Tom, that you didn't answer the question that was asked.
The question, as I understood it, was what would happen if we don't end up with a permit on forest land as far as the ski area. We have a lot of private options. We don't need to go into those. But let's just put it this way, even if we had a semi-private ski area, for instance, we would probably be over capacity and have to look at some restriction on that capacity as other ski areas do. Does that answer your question? Or in people's mind? Well, the development will occur. There's no question about that, because I think we can create the future that we want, and we can create it in a way that we enjoy living here. Frankly, that's what I took on when I decided to stay ranching here. I didn't want to go somewhere else. I didn't want to sell off to a movie star.
So what it comes down to is Mr. McClay is going to build one way or another. And he is going to make money one way or another. The question is, should he be allowed to make more money through the sacrifice of public lands, our public lands? Mr. McClay may be proud of not selling out to a movie star, but in my estimation, what he's doing right now is the same, if not worse. By fronting this luxury ski area that more than one movie star could buy into. At least a movie star, if he sold all of his land to one, might have kept the land as a Montana ranch, as open land. Now, lest you think I'm slamming Mr. McClay, I will say this, or at least not slamming him too much. He has not been so underhanded as to use political pull. I hold Pat Williams in high regard, and so the following story describes something that may go to Mr. McClay's credit.
That previous question where Maggie was hesitant to answer, she did say that sometimes they just take orders from on high, either the Congress or the Forest Service. And I happen to know about something that I think is probably necessary to share with you. I don't have a dog in this fight, and I'm not sure if this resort ought to go up or not. I just don't know, and I don't think it's my job to have to be part of it. But you ought to know this, because the question got at whether or not there's a conspiracy from on high somehow. People on high came to the developers and said, "Do you want to slam dunk this? We can pave the way for this. We can send the orders down, and we'd like to do it for the development." And Tom, or the people that worked with him, said, "No. This is Missoula's choice. Let's do this fairly and in the open." And they're to be credited for that.
So, who do you think these politicians on high might have been? Based upon some comments that you'll see soon, I have my suspicions.
I happen to look at the forest as a renewable resource. I don't think it's any different than a cornfield in Iowa or grass in eastern Montana. I'm also concerned about additional wilderness recommendations. It's in the Beaverhead plan, and I will tell you why. Whenever those recommendations are made, the Forest Service has a habit of managing these acres as wilderness. So we get de facto wilderness without Congress taking any action at all. Well, I'm pleased the Forest Service is trying to become more efficient in its planning process. I have several concerns about this process and how it moves forward. Unlike other federal management agencies, the Forest Service has a multiple use mandate that is not clear to me that it's not clear to me that the agency is following this mandate in its recent work on forest plans here in Montana. For example, the draft environmental impact statement for the Beaverhead Lodge, the agency preferred alternative would reduce the allowable sales quantity reduce it from 40 million board feet to 9, a 78% reduction, increase in the number of wilderness acres from 174,000 to 249,000. That's a 43% increase. And imposed many new restrictions on public access, particularly motorized vehicles like ATVs and snowmobiles. Now, these numbers may be justified. And if they are, we'd like justification for those numbers. That's the only thing that we're questioning here is the justification for the numbers. So I find the proposals troubling if we don't have something or some way to back up those numbers and give us good, solid reasons why they should come out a lot different than when they first went in.
Senator Burns is the chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee. This means that he holds the purse strings of the Forest Service. If the Forest Service does things that are not to his liking, he has the power to show his disapproval. Obviously, Senator Burns does not approve of having any more wilderness than what he himself can justify. And obviously, he can't justify very much if all forests are, to him, his cornfields in Iowa. If the Carlton Ridge area was no longer wilderness, that would probably please Conrad Burns. But luckily, Maggie Pittman of the Forest Service does not seem to share the attitude of Senator Burns. Here she is to tell you how you can have a say in this issue. We can let the Forest Service know our desires, and it is very important that we do so.
I think that since there is no formal proposal for development on public land at this time, it's a bit premature for me to comment on any advantages and disadvantages. I do believe, however, that the economy and quality of life in Missoula benefit greatly by the intrinsic value of the public lands that surround us. I suspect each of us carry with us our own personal set of attributes that make this country so special and meaningful to each of us. Your being here today is a testament to how passionate you are about the management of your public lands. I think the greatest advantage of nearby public land to any citizen is the opportunity to have your voice heard regarding the management of your public land. There is not an acre of public land or a foot of public stream bank that is not deserving of debate and scrutiny. Public land managers in the Northern Rockies are so fortunate to serve an informed and engaged public. To that end, I'd like to tell you how you can continue to be involved in the forest plan revision process and the discussion about the management of the Lolo Peak area and the revision of the Bitterroot and the Lolo National Forest plans. Since both forests are included in the Western Montana Planning Zone, the plans for both forests are currently being revised under one process. Where we're at today is we're in the final stages of developing the draft forest plans. They will be out probably about late March. We've had several kind of internal reviews. We're still going through those, fine-tuning it. Beginning in April, we will start a round of public open houses that we promised we'd do. You'll have an opportunity to look at the draft forest plan for the Bitterroot, the Lolo, and the Flathead National Forests, as we're all part of the Western Montana Planning Zone. And we're offering a 90-day comment period, which I hope will hear some well-informed and thoughtful comments from you. In April, we'll have a round of open houses in all the communities that we serve, and specifically in Missoula, we'll have an open house, I don't know the location yet, but it'll be on April 6th. It's critical that we hear from you during the upcoming 90-day public review period. The revised plans will be our contract with you for how we manage the National Forest and your public lands for the next 10 to 15 years.
So there's been a number of meetings already, and here's the kinds of comments that a number of concerned citizens in the area are making to the Forest Service.
All the people at our table were skeptical about the value to the Missoula area. Skeptical is putting it mildly, of the ski area development. Sharon at our table was involved in conducting a survey. She contacted 59 people in the Carlton Ridge area, and of those 50 people signed a petition against the ski area development. And I think our general comment is that the people at our table appreciate the value and the quality of life that the Missoula area currently provides, and don't see the need or the benefit for this kind of development And in fact, we are very, very, very much concerned that this kind of development would be contrary to the kinds of values that the people at this table most appreciate for living in the Missoula area.
Hi, I'm Bill, and our table is a little puzzled, I think. We have a number of skiers who wouldn't mind stepping off a tram at the top of Lolo Peak. On the other hand, we're puzzled because we thought we were here discussing not a small development on Mr. McClay's land, but the use of public land on the Lolo Peak side, which is barely pictured in the right-hand side of that picture. And as we understand it, his website advertises North America's largest ski resort. And so we're imagining another Aspen, for better or for worse. And we think the discussion has not been addressing the reality of a large ski area which has at least 10 times the amount of acreage devoted to condo and high-end home development than to skiing. And it is industry knowledge, as we saw in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times last year, that ski resorts now with skier days flattened out make their money off real estate. And if you look at the plans for, say, Big Sky at a meeting like this, the plans they submitted for their initial development are nothing compared to the approximately 100 square miles of real estate development now going on above them up and down that valley. So we are imagining many, many runs off of Carlton Ridge, as your other maps show. When you have an aerial view, most of the development is on the Lolo Peak, not on the private lands, and we assume that's what we're discussing. Now then, does Missoula want another Aspen? That's the question, which is a large real estate development built around the lifestyle of skiing and golf as a magnet. And we think if we face that's the question, then we want to know what are the instruments by which Missoula can control its own fate rather than have big money doing it, intra-west, hundreds of millions of dollars helping something like that out. So that's the question, and therefore, I'm speaking personally now, not for the table, I think that the default position on the resort, not on your land, Tom, that's your business, but on the big picture, which is not pictured, the default position should be absolutely not until the developers come to us with full disclosure and the community spends a year or two realistically assessing the consequences of another Aspen. Is that the kind of money we want? Will it produce a super rich class and minimum wage rather than a middle class that the health industry gives us another thing? So we feel the questions aren't even being addressed yet, and we would like the community tools to take community control of the analysis and the answers.
You can tell from the reaction to that last comment that many people are concerned with the potential impacts that the Bitterroot Resort may have on our area. Most don't want this area to become another Aspen. This is not a done deal, although many people I've talked to think it is. A number of people out there think that the resort has already been defeated, but this is not the case. There is still a possibility that the Forest Service could decide in favor of the proposal, if they get one in, of the Bitterroot Resort. This is why it is so important that people contact the Forest Service and or attend the April 6th meeting to let the Forest Service know what the general public wants. There are many things at stake. I'll give Bob Clark the final say in this because I think he pretty much sums it up. Thank you.
We need to remember that the public lands above the property lends enormous value to the private property. So without the public lands, we're looking at probably condominiums or housing going for $220,000 to $290,000. With that access, exclusive access to public land, real estate prices can then be jacked up, doubled, tripled from that. And so what the public land brings to the private land is an enormous increase in the real estate potential. And so the public land portion with the ski area is really, the ski area is an amenity to the village, just like the golf course is an amenity or the ice skating rink. And what it does as an amenity is it brings higher value to the village. The difference between the different amenities is that the ski area is an amenity on our land. The golf course, the ice skating is on his land. That's different. But when you start asking the American people for 12,000 acres of their public land so that they can triple real estate values on the private land, people start to wonder about that. And people are not sure if that's a trade-off that they're willing to do. Everyone has to make that decision in their own mind and in their own heart, whether that's a fair trade-off for them. And I think that if without the access to that public land, I don't think, my feeling is that the big investors, the big guys, are not going to come to the table without that public land. If we can keep that public land in our control and the way it is right now, I think, as Steve said, we're probably going to look at a much more scaled down version, would be my opinion.